Welcome back to Photographing and Communicating with Fairies. Today I'm going to talk about how I am qualified to teach you how to communicate with the fairies in your photos. But to do this, I have to go back to 2006 and talk about what happened back then. If you've ever had some major synchronicities going on in your life, in other words, everything seemed to fall together in a really amazing way where you knew you had to have some kind of divine intervention, divine guidance going on. And that's what happened back in 2006. And it started with my going online to try and find someone for my husband to interview for our website, Night Watchman Chronicles. Night Watchman Chronicles was allowed to lapse back in January of 2017, replaced by Land of Wee Folk and now Fairy Quest. And we had been running that website since 2004, so a long time running. Anyway, I went online to find someone for my husband to interview for Night Watchman Chronicles, and I came across a woman by the name of Rachel from England who said that she was able to create a drawing of a person's spirit guide through a photograph of that person. So because I liked our Night Watchman Chronicles website to be as authentic as possible, and anything that we offered, I wanted to make sure that people would get what they were paying for. I went ahead and tested Rachel to see if she was actually going to deliver what she said she could deliver. I paid, I think, $25 or $35, I don't remember, and sent my photograph to her. Now, I used not the Night Watchman Chronicles website email address. I used my own personal email address. So she had no idea who I was, that I wasn't just somebody that came across her accidentally and wanted a spirit guide drawing. She did not know I was affiliated with Night Watchman Chronicles until later, after she delivered what she promised to deliver. So anyway, I went ahead and sent these things, and she sent an email back right away, kind of an automated one that said, you know, the drawing would be received in 10 days from the date that she received the photograph. During this time, during this 10-day wait, and to me, it seemed as though coming across Rachel was just accidental. I had been searching for someone, but I found out later that it was not accidental at all. There was, as I said, guide intervention, divine intervention. So during this 10-day wait, my husband and I during this time, this 10-day wait, my husband and I actually had a little bit of downtime and were able to go to a Meskwaki powwow. Now, this is a Native American tribe in my area, and they do a powwow every year, and they dance, and there's vendors that sell all different kinds of Native American items. So we were able to take the kids to this powwow. Also, at the same time, I had started dreaming, and I'm not really one to remember dreams often. When they are remembered, they are important, and I was having a dream about creating a dowsing board. I didn't know that it was a dowsing board at the time during the dream, but as each evening came about and I woke up the next morning, I had a little bit more of a picture of what this dowsing board was supposed to look like. So at the powwow, we were going through the vendors after watching some of the dancing, and of course the kids wanted to, purchase something. So each of the kids was able to get something to remember this powwow by. And I came across a little tiny display of pendulums. The last thing I expected to find at a powwow. Even with vendors, I was looking for moccasins and drums and, those kinds of things. But there was a very small display of pendulums. And I was very attracted to one in particular. It kind of looked like it had an eye on it, and I was being inner urged to purchase this pendulum, though I didn't really know why. I had kind of an idea that it was going to match up with the dowsing board. But I didn't purchase the pendulum right away, and the kids all picked out their items, and we were headed to the car to go home, and I just had this urge, this amazing, I'm going to spin you around and you're going to go get that pendulum urge. And I did. I went and I purchased the pendulum, which was amazingly $5 for such a beautiful little thing. Unfortunately, after a good amount of use with this pendulum, somehow it disappeared. I had been using it one night and I placed it on my coffee table, and an inner voice said, "You need to put it away." And I ignored it. Next morning I got up and could not find that pendulum anywhere, and I've never found it to this day. So moving on, the promised drawing came within the 10 days. In fact, it was exactly 10 days. And I was very amazed at what I received. And I printed it off, obviously, and put it into a frame. This is my spirit guide, Sakina. And I'm going to read you what the woman wrote to me down below. And keep in mind, she had no idea that I was affiliated with Night Watchman Chronicles at the time. So down below she says, "Hi Christina, I'd like to introduce you to Sakina. As I tuned into your picture, she came forward almost immediately, and so my job was easy. Sakina is your main guide, working with you at present and always has been. I am also aware there have been 3 other guides, 2 males and another female, who come and go at times when you need them, but Sakina has been with you since birth. She is an ancient soul and has been here in many incarnations, but none in modern times. When I say modern times, I mean she tells me she's been spirit side through choice for the past 749 years. You have been here with her before many centuries ago. She is the closest person to you in your soul group. She is very protective and keeps you from physical harm, especially in your dealings with the paranormal. Think of her as your gatekeeper or defender. She will always be there for you. Her energy is serenity itself, but whenever you are provoked by someone, you will feel her protecting you. Bright blessings, Rachel." So notice in there that it talked about my dealings with the paranormal, and that's what Night Watchman Chronicles was about. It was a paranormal website. So this was kind of confirmation for me that this woman actually did receive something amazing from my guide Sakina. After this powwow, because I had gotten the pendulum and because I had had those dreams about the pendulum board, I told my husband, I said, we need to stop at Walmart and I need to pick up something to do this. So we went to Walmart and I got one of these boards here. And as you can see, the date on this one, this is my original, August 22nd, 2006. Chris's pendulum board is what I wood burned on the back. And this was very important to me to remember, and I've had this original board ever since. And I had been wood burning for a long time, so it just made sense to create the pendulum board through wood burning. So I sat down and I drew out what I needed to for my pendulum board, and I wood burned it. Didn't take very long. And a couple of evenings later, I was being urged. I was doing dishes, and I kept getting this, sit down with your board and pendulum, sit down with your board and pendulum. And by this time, I had received my picture of Sakina. Interestingly enough, and just a side note, one of my favorite movies has always been Rose Red. It's a Stephen King movie. And we were actually able to interview the people who owned the bed and breakfast, kind of a castle, Rose Red Castle. And I can't remember the name of it now. It's in Oregon. Anyway, my husband actually was able to interview them about their usage of the place for the movie Rose Red. But in Rose Red, the woman's friend is named Sakina. And I just found that very, very interesting that my guide's name is Sakina and that woman's name from my favorite movie was Sakina. And again, Rachel in England would have no way of knowing any of this. There was no conversation between us, just a photograph and an email exchanged. So anyway, I was urged while doing dishes to sit down and use my board and pendulum, and I did. It was a slow process at first, but it was amazing the information that was coming out of this board. So since that time, and of course I practiced, and I would do for my kids and I would do for my husband. And in fact, at one point my husband, he just really still didn't know what to think of all this. And he sat across from me at the table, and I asked Sakina if it would be okay if he used my board and pendulum. And of course she agreed. It was even slower for him for the dowsing process, but information came through for him that was pretty amazing as well. And he knew that he was not moving that pendulum himself. It was going on its own. So from that point on, he was a firm believer of the dowsing process. After much practice, I opened my own metaphysical shop and began teaching other people how to connect up with their spirit guides. And of course, at the same time, we still had Night Watchman Chronicles. So I was also dowsing photographs for people with different anomalies within them. So it was just a natural process to, once I began photographing fairies, to begin communicating with them. But as I said before, I didn't start communicating right away with them. I was just so excited about taking the photographs and finding the fairies within them. But then once the communicating began, and you can see some of this communication on my website, fairyquest.com. There's a section for messages specifically, and there's not a lot of them. I've gotten so much more, but you kind of have to pick and choose, for website information, and I may change them out from time to time. But anyway, I've taught hundreds of people. I was even doing rather larger classes with 10 people at a time for teaching them how to communicate with their spirit guides. Communicating with fairies is really no different. You actually go through your spirit guide as kind of a go-between, which we'll discuss in a later lesson. So I think because I have been doing this since 2006, at least the dowsing portion, and I've been communicating with the fairies since 2016, and it is now 2019, I think I am quite qualified to teach you how to do this, and I do hope that you are having a full understanding thus far through these classes of how to photograph them, and this is just the next step. So I will move on with these lessons. That gives you an idea of my background here, and I am very much looking forward to teaching you how to communicate with fairies. So until the next lesson, I'll see you there.